Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm Cara Anderson. I am a senior at Albion College in Michigan, studying political science and English. I also have the opportunity to work as a research scholar with HRE USA, and I am so happy to be here with you today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jake Skripek. I'm a social studies teacher in Manchester, Connecticut. I'm also on the steering committee for HRE USA, a Connecticut regional rep for HRE USA, and I chair the National Council for Social Studies Human Rights Education Community. Glad to be with you all today.
So we'll get started with just some basics. What are human rights? So human rights are the rights that every human has just for being human, and they're essential for a life of dignity. You can find these rights in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And all of these rights are equal and universal. So no matter who you are, where you're from, what you identify as, you have these rights. These rights are inalienable, meaning they can never be taken away. Just because a right isn't being realized doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It might just be violated at that moment. And rights are also interdependent. And so the violation of one right often leads to the violation of other rights. And when one right is protected, it can help strengthen other rights as well. For example, we see how political rights are dependent on like economic rights. If you're struggling to get by, you might not have time to vote and be engaged in the political process. And conversely, if you don't have those political rights and the right to vote, then those who are leading might not have the accountability to make sure your economic rights are protected. And that's just one of many examples. Some other characteristics include non-discrimination, which goes back to that universality and equality component. We know that most rights violations do come down to some form of discrimination. So really highlighting that non-discrimination part is important. Rights are indivisible, they can't be broken up. There's a focus on empowerment and agency. We never want to go in with a saviorist approach that tends to do a lot more harm. We want to be lifting people up, and we know that all people have agency and power. We want human rights institutions to be transparent. That way there can be accountability to make sure that people are protecting human rights. And it is ultimately the government's responsibility to protect, although we all do have some responsibility. So what is human rights education? So of course, educating others about human rights, but it does get more complex than that. And to start, it really is a lifelong process of teaching and learning that helps individuals, groups, and communities. So it's a constant dialogue, constant being both student and teacher, and working to develop the knowledge, skills, and values to fully exercise and protect rights and those of others, and making sure to fulfill responsibilities in the context of those internationally recognized human rights principles, and ultimately with the goal of achieving justice and peace in the world. So there are kind of three ways to go about human rights education, which is like about, through, and for. So education about human rights includes like the knowledge and understanding of the basics of what human rights are, what those principles are, and what mechanisms are in place for their protection. And then education through human rights really includes learning and teaching in a way that respects the rights of both educators and learners. And then education for human rights includes empowering persons to enjoy and exercise their rights and respect and uphold the rights of others. So another thing we talk about a lot in human rights and human rights education is the idea of the head, the heart, and the hands. So the head is kind of that knowledge, that basic understanding of what human rights are and the mechanisms that are in place, what the statistics and facts might be about violations that are going on in the world. But then the heart involves the attitudes, values, more of that emotional element. We know that facts and data alone often doesn't sway people. It's usually really important to have that emotional side. That's where storytelling and the arts and all of those different elements can really play an important role. And then once you get people kind of on board and persuaded and engaged and wanting to do more, then you can really move into the hands, which is the skills, those actions, and going out and really working to protect rights. This is a brief timeline of human rights education. We won't spend much time on this today. And so why is human rights education and training important, and why should it be pursued? So of course, it's really important to be able to educate others about rights in order to protect those rights and to promote the values, beliefs, and attitudes that encourage all individuals to uphold their own rights and those of others, to develop an understanding of everyone's common responsibility to make human rights a reality in each community. And it constitutes an essential contribution to the long-term prevention of human rights abuses. And it's an important investment in the endeavor to achieve a just society in which all human rights of all persons are valued and respected. And this right is so important. Human rights education is so important that it actually is a human right in itself. And you see in so many of the universal declarations and conventions the right to educate others about their rights. And you can see here just a list of some of those examples, like the Convention of the Rights of the Child, International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of the Migrant Workers, and it goes on, because it can be really hard to educate about human rights, and there's barriers oftentimes, but it really is so important, and it is a right. So here are some models of human rights education that have been put together by Felissa Tibbetts, who is a member of the HRE USA community and does a lot of work around human rights and human rights education. And she talks about this model where it starts with values and awareness and kind of the transmission of information on general human rights theory, history, and content, that then moves into accountability, the development of capacities and skills related to learners' professional role and responsibilities, and then finally moving into activism and transformation. And it's that personal transformation and empowerment oriented towards activism and social change with a focus on learners' rights. Now, there are some critiques to human rights education, and if it's not done well, it does have the power to do harm and perpetuate Western values to the exclusion of others. It is important to note that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was not just drafted by Western nations. It really was a project that was hearing from many diverse voices that were a part of that. But still, we often see in human rights conversations where Western values are sometimes pushed in a harmful way and excluding others, sometimes ignoring structural violence and institutional discrimination, and sometimes used to reinforce state power and power imbalances between states, where one state might want to critique another for their violations without owning up to the ones that they've done. And that may be due to the power that those states have in the international community. So it's really important to recognize this and center human rights education around discussion and critically looking at these systems that are in place and making sure we're hearing and lifting up all voices. Which kind of goes into this critical pedagogy idea, which examines human rights education through the perspective of the oppressed rather than blindly accepting the dominant narrative. It's focusing on the oppressed liberating themselves and the empowerment of oppressed groups. Because we know that all people have something valuable to say, valuable experiences to contribute. And we want to be hearing what people actually need and not going in with what we think they need, and knowing that people have the power to liberate themselves and have that agency. And so we want to be able to support. So again, just having that dialogue around these topics is really important in opening up that conversation to all people, which is again echoed here in the decolonizing pedagogy, analyzing those oppressive structures of colonization, acknowledging and scrutinizing Eurocentric and US-centric dominance that has oppressed colonized people throughout history, acknowledging that the global discourse of human rights and human rights education emerged against the background of the history of colonization and the struggles against imperial violence, and focusing on historical injustices and their connection to present day human rights violations. So none of this is to say that human rights education is bad. We know it's very helpful. We just do have to be aware of how we're approaching human rights and making sure we're critically thinking about these issues. Now, human rights education does overlap with a lot of other areas, such as citizenship education, peace education, social justice education, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging education. It's not the exact same thing as all of these, but they definitely overlap and can support each other. And there are situations where using the language of one might connect with people a little bit more. And so having an understanding that these do relate to each other is important, such as citizenship education. The right to vote is a human right, and making sure that people are aware of that right and have access to it and can be critically informed voters is important. And so that's just one example of a lot of these overlaps. Okay. And now we will be switching it over to Jake to talk a little bit about Human Rights Educators USA. And I believe I've stopped sharing my screen now.
All right, thank you, Kara. Yeah, so I have the privilege of really speaking about what our organization, HRE USA, does. We are a broad network, but I think I'll start with really centering us as we are a family. We are a large community of folks who are very much dedicated to this notion and the advancement of human rights education as a practice and as a lived experience. So really our organization, Human Rights Educators USA, it's a collaborative network that aims to learn, teach, organize, advocate, and really innovate for human rights education in the United States. And you see here a number of our leaders presenting at conferences, really trying to further the mission of HRE USA across a numerous array of sectors across the United States. We're really grounded in these very core principles of dignity, equality, and non-discrimination that are very much represented in both the UDHR and in these foundational United Nations documents. And very much we believe that human rights education is transformative, that it has a place in this world really to uplift these core ideas of dignity, justice, and peace. We do that with a finite aim on dismantling those systems of oppression, such as systemic racism, white supremacy, and all of those barriers we know that affect a range of communities, both in the United States and abroad. Part of our mission is to really, as I said, advance HRE across all sectors and all spaces across the United States. And we've done that through a variety of different methods. I think this idea of empowering educators and learners is really core to our mission. And we've done that through integrating and really developing human rights standards. We've worked with professionals to really develop meaningful curricula and best practices in pedagogy. We've really tried to expand into contributing to global research and scholarship. And so we are a wide-ranging network that really tries to, again, advance this core mission of what HRE is all about. Our fiscal sponsor is the Center for Transformative Action at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. That's where we, as a nonprofit, get some of our funding to do some of our programmatic work. Our organization is really built around the dedication and leadership of volunteers. We have a number of volunteers who've said that they're dedicated to this organization and its particular mission. We have a number of structures. One of our main structures in terms of governance is our steering committee. And so we have about 20 or so members on the steering committee that select its executive committee officers each year. And you can see here the number of officers that are kind of identified. We also have other advisors in terms of a project advisor, a strategy advisor, and our regional representative coordinator that I'll speak to in a little bit. So we have people who are really dedicated to serving this organization in really a variety of leadership capacities. These are our 2024-2026 priorities. We've articulated these over the last really 6 to 8 months. And as you see here, they really spanned the gamut of our work. Youth leadership, individual organizational leadership, membership capacity and training, internal and external collaborations, policy and practice, innovation, ongoing learning, sustainability and fundraising, and really throughout all of these, telling our human rights story, human rights educator story, and really amplifying what we're truly, truly about. We also have here kind of the written text behind our priorities, if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper into that. And we have a wide range of opportunities to get involved in our lovely organization. We have all of our action teams listed here. We have about 10 teams that in recent months we've kind of reconstituted, really tried to hone in some of the good work that's been happening as an organization. And if you're interested in getting involved in any of these teams, I'll mention a little bit later how to do so. But as you see, you can get involved in advocacy and policy. You can get involved in how do we cultivate our membership. You can get involved in professional development and how do we really help educators in the field do their good work around HRE. So there's a wide range of opportunities to get involved with some of these action teams. Our regional rep network, a regional representative network, is really divided into 4 main areas of the country: Midwest, Northeast, South, and West. The regional representatives are really leaders who have stepped up and said, I want to be a vocal conduit to the national organization, HRE USA, and really work with the organization to bring opportunities, events, and really build that fusion between a locale and the national organization. So myself, I'm one of the Connecticut regional reps, and in previous years, I've used my connection with HRE USA to really bring some opportunities to Connecticut and vice versa. And we really tried to kind of build these expansive networks across many spaces in our country. We're always looking for new regional reps. We don't have every state covered in the country. And so if you're interested in getting involved as a regional representative, please, we'll be happy to give you a contact to reach out to get involved. And again, just to kind of drill down on this, our regional reps span the entire country. If I click here just for a second, you can see that on our website, if you scroll down, we have a number of people who have really stepped up into those leadership roles and really come from a variety of spaces across the country. We also have our Kirby Edmonds Fellowship that we've been running the last couple of years. Kirby was a dedicated, passionate leader as part of our steering committee for many years. Kirby passed a couple of years ago, and we've really tried to constitute a living legacy for his work in the form of a summer fellowship that we've run over the last couple of summers. Really, some of the fruits of that fellowship have been fantastic. We've had recent or either university students or recent graduates of universities come on as summer fellows and take on a variety of projects that are really aligned with our core priorities. So you can see here, some of the fellows have taken on looking at our online media strategy. Some fellows have taken on really looking at how do we engage with our broader community. Some fellows have taken on the development of the TAAS, the Training as Action series, which this session today is part of. So we're really trying to hone the good work that's already going on throughout the year and use the summer fellowship as a way to advance some of that good work. We have a number of methods that you can receive communications from us and vice versa. So we have an e-newsletter, we have discussion forums, we have regular social media blasts through Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We have a podcast, which I'll talk about in a minute. Membership profiles that really uplift and show the good work that some of our members are doing. Number of toolkits and briefs that can be some really tangible resources for educators or others in the field, and our annual report that really gives a good breakdown of our work annually. As I just mentioned, if you're interested, our annual report is linked in these slides. It's really a multi-page document that gives everyone looking at it a wide-ranging overview of the good work that's happened each year as part of HRE USA. I will just say that, some of the statistics information in the annual report is really fascinating. We, as I said before, are a volunteer organization, and we rely on those in-kind hours from folks to really help thrive and help sustain this organization. So if you get a chance to take a look at the annual report, it's a really fascinating deep dive into what we do as an organization. Every year, we also have a Human Rights Day annual celebration. As many of you might know, International Human Rights Day is celebrated every year on December 10th in commemoration of the signing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We've run a online Human Rights Day virtual celebration for the last couple of years. We hope to have another one this coming year in early December, but each year we really try to use this event to celebrate youth leaders, adult leaders doing good work in HRE, do some really powerful recognitions, and honor the collective work of our broader community. We also have a podcast that has been thriving really for a little over a year now. We have a wide range of interviews that are part of the podcast. And these statistics, I think, are really something to kind of show and tout ourselves about, that we have a wide impact. 600 plus downloads, 52 countries reached, 173 cities, 6 continents, and ever growing. We're very, very excited about the impact that this podcast, Human Rights Education Now, has had. So if you get a chance, definitely take a listen. It's on a number of platforms across our web platforms. We also have a HRE USA library where you can really hone in and see what are some lessons, what are some best practices that teachers have developed and that have cultivated over the years. They're all ranged by subjects and topics that you can dive into based on your choice. We also have some really interesting collections that we've developed, some one-stop shop resources that teachers can and educators more broadly can really go into and look at. So we've done collections on voting, we've done collections on racial justice, we've done ones on democracy and human rights. We have a new one coming out very soon around displacement and conflict around the world. So we're very, very excited about some of these collections that are ready-made resources for educators. We have a number of other projects and partnerships that we have done over the years. We really had this kind of collection focused on the Children's Rights Convention and the advocacy around children's rights in the United States and abroad. We've worked with Amnesty International to work with them on some of their toolkits and other resources for educators, and a number of other projects that we're very proud to partner on. We have an online shop, so if you're interested in getting some quick swag for your classroom or for your learning space, there are some number of UDHR posters, some pamphlets, and some online books that really give you an understanding of human rights education more broadly. I'd be remiss if we don't mention some of our partners. We have a strong partnership with the National Council for Social Studies, which has a a particular community affinity space around human rights education. I am one of the co-chairs of that space, and so we've had a really strong partnership for the last 10 years or so with NCSS. We also have a strong partnership with the University and College Consortium for Human Rights Education. This is really a group that advocates for the inclusion of HRE at the higher education level. We have partnerships with the Right to Learn Coalition, which is a group really across the nation trying to foster this notion and live practice of the right to learn, really pushing back against some of those threats to the right to education. And we have a partnership with the National Human Rights Institution for the United States. This is an advocacy group that's really focused on advancing the idea of a institution focused on human rights in the United States. We're one of not that many that has. Sorry, we're one. The United States is a country that does not have a national human rights institution. So we kind of stand alone in that regard. And so there's some push to really get that institution up and running from a variety of organizations. Lastly, I'll just mention that among all the good work that HRE USA does, we are running this Training is Action series that is part of this session that you are part of today. We have a number of sessions coming up. In particular, we have one on Monday, September 30th at 7 p.m., all online, focused on youth power and defending human rights. I'll just click here real quick. If you go to our website, and these are included in the slides that we're presenting, you can scroll down and really see the other sessions that we'll be running throughout the fall and into the spring around a range of topics that I think are very timely and very important for all educators to dive into and participate in. So we would highly encourage you to register for those sessions and to engage with us on some of that other good work. If you're interested in becoming a member of HRE USA, please click on the link here. There is a nominal fee to join as a member, but we try to keep things pretty cost effective. And there's many benefits to becoming a member. As I mentioned previously, you get access to e-newsletters, you get access to events, you get potentially opportunities to join a team or committee, and we really value, again, your leadership and your expertise. We are a consensus-driven organization that really thrives on the expertise, the experience, and the insights of all people, both leaders and members. Lastly, we have a link down here to join a team. We are updating our website currently, but there will be a dedicated page focused on some of those teams I mentioned, where you'll have some contact information to join one of those teams if so interested. We'd like you to stay connected with us. We have, if you click on any of these links, we have a LinkedIn, an Instagram, and Facebook page. You can also click on the link here to receive our newsletter. And we would just like to say thank you for coming to this session today. If you would like to give us some feedback, we'd really deeply appreciate it for attending this session. So you can scan this QR code with your cell phone. The SurveyMonkey link is right there for you. Please, we would love you to take this survey just to give us some initial feedback on this session, because we're always consistently trying to improve and make these workshops and webinars that we host even better. So from Kara and myself, we really thank you for coming today. We hope you will join us for a future TAAS session, and we hope you all have a wonderful week and a great evening.